I've had a sick little one. I have not. I'm like behind on everything. I'm pretty sure I'm getting sick, but I'm trying to ignore that. I already know I'm gonna have to start and stop this a bunch of times, but I'm stuck on something that I need to drill down on, so I'm just gonna jump right in. I imagine there are investigators who really believed Keegan was involved, him and his dad were involved, someone in their circle was involved. I think some of them had a reason to investigate those two. But if you don't see that after they lit $1 million on fire and found nothing, there were some people in Carroll County who may have had incentive to go back looking for old tips, looking for something. In the absence of anything that they could make stick against Keegan Kline, they needed something at the very least to justify the amount of money they lit on fire searching that river for something. I don't think they did it for any other reason other than they thought there's got to be something in there if we can just find it. But when they didn't, they went back looking for something to justify it. They came across an old interview for someone that was never on their radar. That should have been the first red flag. The fact that it wasn't on any of their radar, the only reason for that is for there to have been no reason for that person to be on their radar. Don't discount the fact that he could be a complete dipshit idiot who didn't understand the implication of someone telling him he was there from 1:30 to 3:30. I just don't think that's what happened. I think it would make more sense for Dan Dulin to have written up a report after talking to Richard Allen and then forgetting about it, because Richard Allen had nothing valuable to offer. Nothing he had to say would have helped the investigation because he was there earlier in the day, not later. And I started putting together all of the news reports leading up until the first time they were going to go back to the beginning. Both Sergeant Riley and Tony Slocum were specific about re-evaluating previous tips and interviews. People that they had dismissed, they were going to give another look. The first time they acknowledged that to the media was in March of 2017. So there's a problem with the facts of the case according to Tony Liggett, the way he presented it to a judge. And then we have the WTHR report citing an investigative source and murder sheet saying there was a clerical error. And the FBI responded, predictably, explaining they reviewed the facts of the matter, which I took as we checked the log report of that case file. We looked at which authorized users accessed and contributed to that report, and we found no clerical error, no misfiling. They were pretty clear that there was not a problem with that report or how it was handled. We don't know the exact date he called or was interviewed, but we do know one thing. They would have had his contact information. They knew who he was. They knew why he called. They knew it was important to interview him, and they knew why it was important to interview him, because he was there that day. Dozens of locals went to the Delphi trials that day, but law enforcement asked anyone who went to the one the girls went missing from to please call them. Even if they didn't see Libby and Abby, they may have seen something that may not mean anything to that person, but might mean something to the investigators. So Richard Allen called for the same reason the other people who went out there that day called, because police asked them to do that, regardless of whether they personally felt that they had any information to offer. They wanted people to let police decide whether that information was important or not. You wouldn't need special training to understand what it would mean if anyone told you to your face that a man went to the trail around the same time the girls went missing. But if you were part of that investigation and you interviewed someone who told you that to your face, how do you walk through headquarters and sit through a morning briefing every day where everybody has one goal: to find the man on the same trail around the same time as the girls? If you interview someone who says they saw anyone on the day 2 girls disappeared for their bodies to be found the next day instead of for them to be found alive and well, grounded for the rest of their life, how is the potential follow-up information you pass on to the FBI to maybe figure out who the 3 girls were at Freedom Bridge. If someone tells you they were there that day, around the time it happened, that's what would go in the supplemental report to follow up on. That would be your new obsession. That man would be all you could think about. Because the whole country had been looking for this person. Looking for anyone with any information about anyone they knew who could have been there on that trail at that time. He would have come up with an excuse to keep Richard Allen there. He would have radioed something in to headquarters telling every one of those detectives to get their ass over there now. This man just told me he was there from 1:30 to 3:30. If you're one of those people who think that the other conservation officer was actually the person who took the report and Dan Dulin just fucked it up and didn't read it or passed it on without paying any attention, that doesn't account for why the honorable officer, who we should believe, also didn't become obsessed with Richard Allen. Dan Dulin's report to have said what Liggett told a judge it said, that would mean Dan Dulin completely missed the mark, but not only him, but whoever he forwarded the information to missed the mark. But it's now 2 people Liggett is claiming not only missed the mark, but didn't even remember it. Then when Liggett magically found this tip narrative that an entire multi-agency task force couldn't pull up in a simple search query that would have pulled up no matter what query you searched, as long, like if you pulled up anybody that was there that day, it didn't matter what time it was, it didn't matter what their name was. Anybody there that day would have pulled up. If there was a report that placed someone there that day, it would not have taken 5 years and 8 months to find it. Police software, especially software integrated with NCIC, is robust. You can search the database for files by input parameters, and you can also search supplemental information that may not have had a more appropriate input field with the automatic validation checks for the reporting or contributing officer to include. Law enforcement agencies send officers to receive training on all of the ways to do these things all the time. Even if Dulin hadn't received that training, other officers with all kinds of experience doing this would have been more than capable of finding Dulin's report from Richard Allen's interview, regardless of which field Dan typed what into. Regardless of how Dulin spelled his name, anything Dan included in his report would have been as discoverable for investigators going back to the beginning in 2017 as it was for investigators in 2022. I'm not able to just accept it as a clerical error or someone misfiling it, because if that were the case, now we're talking at least 3 people who missed it when they went back to the beginning, starting in March, that reevaluate anything to make sure they didn't miss anything in case something was misfiled or downgraded or marked as less important. They went back to review interviews to see if there was any indication of that with any interview, in case they missed something. If there was a clerical error or a typo, if we're talking a typo, are we talking Dan Dulin meant to write a certain time frame but actually didn't, and is this another one of Tony Liggett's, well, the person said this, but I believe they meant something entirely different that they didn't say or write. That's my concern. If this isn't another one of Liggett's creative interpretations of a witness saying one thing but meaning another thing, how Dan Dulin could sit in that morning briefing every morning after walking through headquarters and not bring it up once, hey, what happened to that man I interviewed who placed himself on the same trail around the same time as the girls? Whatever happened to him? Who followed up with him? It is absolutely possible that he fucked shit up, or that he wasn't paying attention, or that he didn't give a shit, because he does not have a history that supports someone who gives a shit about truth, justice, honor. So to believe Liggett's version of this fuck up doesn't just require mental gymnastics, it requires accepting the reality that there will be no resolution. The girl's murder, whether or not it was solved, will always be up for debate. Now we've got this fucking judge who She reminds me of those women who they want to punish their ex-husband, so they drag their kids through like divorce court bullshit. Girl's got some strong divorce court energy or divorced mom energy. I don't know what she's doing. She's got to go. She's got to get out of the way. Prosecutor needs to go. He should have gotten a special prosecutor from the get-go. That dummy is walking around with pinky promises from guards and wardens about how they haven't done anything wrong, and in fact they've gone out of their way to be extra good. Like, that one guard actually said he went out of his way to be gentler with Richard Allen, because guards are notorious for being kind and humane with inmates accused of crimes against children. They pinky promised him everything was good, and that was what he presented to a judge, and the judge took that pinky promise from the prosecutor and then accused the defense attorneys, who actually documented shit, can actually back up their claims. They were the ones accused of lying. And then she appoints a couple of attorneys from her playhouse, and when they come back and say, yeah, there's something going on here, this is not normal, we are unable to protect this man's rights in this situation that is completely fixable, but the prosecutor continues working with the judge not to fix. I don't know if it's a leverage tactic. I don't know if it's just hoping that he'll crumble before they get him out of there. And so they think, well, if we can just keep bullshitting our way out of letting him have the same representation that everybody gets for a reason. I mean, I don't understand these pressure tactics if the goal is to solve the girl's murder and prove it in a court of law. This looks more like wanting to clear a case they can't solve. I think that's what's bothering me, because the moves they're making are boxing us all into a corner where we either have to accept it, knowing full well that this is not resolution, and anybody who comes back later with more evidence or questions will have every right to do so, because none of this is settled. Nothing is clear, and it's frustrating because a lot of this stuff should be really easy to clear up. What time did he say he was there? What car do they have on surveillance footage? Was this man on this trail at the time they say he was or not? In Missy Beaver's case, they released the surveillance footage of the man's vehicle, so we could all figure out if that vehicle belonged to someone we know. His wife, his co-workers, people who went to the bar with him would know if that was Richard Allen's car or not. Even if it was fuzzy, you could be like, oh shit, yep, that's actually him. People have been very kind as far as I can tell. Nobody has come out and said anything like, oh, I knew it. And I know people go the Ted Bundy route where they're like, well, Ted Bundy's wife thought he was awesome. That's because she didn't know he was out killing people. There's no indication this man has done that before. He hasn't been like killing people and like manipulating everybody around him so well that they have no idea he's out killing people, because the police have said there are no crimes that they can connect anything like this to. So like, this would have been his first time, which also makes no sense and also requires mental gymnastics, but that's a whole other issue. My point is, those girls deserve an investigation and a trial that provides us with what we need to say, this is what happened to them, and this guy, if he wants to file an appeal, fuck him, because he did it. We all know he did it. We don't have any of that. We have, kind of looks like him, but the picture's blurry. We have no actual police work investigation to rely on. They're wanting us to rely on him outing himself, and then no evidence to back it up. Anybody can come forward. That's why they hold stuff close to the vest, so if somebody comes forward pretending that they had something to do with it and didn't, it limits that. So if somebody comes forward saying that's them and there's no evidence to back it up, I can't give that any more weight than the Elvis Fields thing where he told his sister he was on the bridge that day and that Abby was such a troublemaker he had to give her horns. There's no evidence of that. If Richard Allen said it, though, that'd be another thing Nick McClellan was blurting out in court, even though he has nothing to back it up with, like he's done before, hoping that that'll be enough for the bloodlust people to just not care whether or not we have the right guy or not. I don't work that way. I want to believe they have the right guy, but I can't. I don't. I've tried. They're making it impossible, and they gotta give us something. This is not right. Something is not right. We already know Liggett changed other witness statements to make Richard Allen fit the limited puzzle pieces law enforcement was working with. Now we need to know if Richard Allen was one of those witnesses. We need to know what Dulin's report said when he filed it and what it said after Liggett got done with it. We need to know which investigators wrongfully cleared it for future follow-up and which person reviewed it and decided it had been wrongfully cleared in the first place, because the system records a log of authorized users who access or contribute to a report, which means those are things that can be verified. And Liggett has turned this into a situation where he doesn't have the credibility to give us his word. We got to get this verified, and it can't be by him or anybody else who's been attached to this investigation, because that's part of the problem. This entire case relies on Dulin's report saying what Liggett told the judge it said, and being lost in the shuffle the way he claims it was. Liggett still needs to explain why he decided to go with Allen's alleged statements to Dulin that Dulin didn't even bother recording, and not the recorded statements from his own interview with Allen. How do you validate a record that you can't validate? Dulin didn't record that interview. So why is Liggett using that information to give to a judge and not the statements Allen gave during his interview to Liggett? That's more credible, but he went with the one that can be verified and was never validated. Did Richard Allen actually give conflicting times? He gave one time frame to Dulin and one time frame to Liggett. So Liggett went with Dulin's statements because that's the only one a judge would sign a warrant based on? Or was there never a time frame in a report placing Richard Allen there, so Liggett just made another interpretation of other people's words and filled in what he needed it to say after the fact? Did Tony Liggett contribute to that report? And if he did, when? When did he contribute to that report? What did he contribute to that report? And you can't just put shit in there that you can't back up, because if it can't be verified, it could be cleared. What if it is right? But then we're back to, if Richard Allen said to Dan Dulin what Liggett says he did, why didn't Dan Dulin call for backup immediately? Because Richard Allen just told him he's the man everybody's looking for. So that's where I'm at with this. I think I don't even like to say what I think because it's horrible, but after watching that footage I put together for the last video, those men, I had a new respect for them. I had a very low opinion of them before that. By the end of it, you could just tell they wanted to find this person. I think Dan Dulin is a shit person, but I don't think he's an idiot. And nothing about his history could leave anyone with the impression that he would be hesitant to arrest someone, get a search warrant. That doesn't add up either. As far as Unified Command goes, I think their case is complete bullshit. These clowns have been lying to and manipulating the families to avoid accountability. They've created a situation that's unfuckable in a small town where people don't want to right these kind of wrongs for obvious reasons. I think we're in dangerous waters with this shit. There are things we should be able to clarify, and when we're not able to clarify them, it drives me crazy, especially when it's something that would strengthen the state's case. If Liggett's version of what happened is actually true, that would be something we could put on this, like we could finally start putting something on the side of the prosecutors, like with some weight to it, not because this YouTuber has an inside source saying, oh yeah, look at these text messages between me and this other person involved in the case. Oh, look at this one report that I'm taking a picture of and you can't verify. Doesn't that totally make you think what I'm saying now is true? That stuff is such bullshit. I cannot believe it works on people, but it does. That's not gonna cut it. If those people want to settle this, that's the dumbest way to settle it, because it doesn't settle it. And I don't know how to help them understand that, but we need like actual documents from public officials, not from people who were close to the case once or used to work on it or whatever and are now investigating this with YouTubers online. Give me a break. Fuck that. This is stupid. It's embarrassing. I don't want to dunk on them, but oh my God, It's hard not to. It's real hard not to, because it's so stupid that they expect anybody to believe them just because they believed somebody. I don't care who that person is. If that person, like, why is that person risking this investigation to talk to them? That's one of those red flags that those people are, instead of seeing it as a red flag, they're seeing it as evidence against some man there's no actual evidence against. It's scary that someone could be put away forever because some people are convinced by information warfare. I don't know what the term is when it's used by police departments. I only know the one that's used in wartime. Like, it's a thing. It's what happens. If you don't know what I'm talking about, please go back and look at the press release from law enforcement after George Floyd was killed, before the video came out. That's what I'm talking about. That's the kind of stuff that some of these people close to the investigation are running around spoon feeding to all these YouTubers, and they are eating it up and spreading it around and confusing a lot of people. It's not helpful to this case. It's not helpful to anybody. That shit has to stop. Like, if you want to speculate because somebody close to the investigation mentioned this, that's fine. You can, like, evaluate it. But if it doesn't make sense and you're still pushing it just because of who the person is that told you that, if you don't understand the problem with that, I'm not sure I can help you, but I'm for damn sure not going to argue with you. If your sources disagree with me, they are welcome to leave their own comment and make their own video responding to me. I'm not going to be responding to some proxy of them. This is so stupid. I'm not doing it. I'm not entertaining it. Fuck off. I don't care about that shit. I care about, like, this actual report and the FBI's actual response, like the public ones, the ones that we will deal with in a court of law. Not this bullshit you keep saying you're really sure is, like, it'll come out, like, trust the plan, trust you go right, you trust that plan, but, like, go trust it elsewhere. And if you're so confident in it, then give me time to work my way to that, okay? So yeah, that's where I'm at. I need someone to make it make sense.
Let